know, firstly, that you're not alone. 70% of kids with autism are picky eaters. They have more picky eating habits, more unique picky eating habits. And so I find it is helpful to really take some time, be patient, and kind of one step at a time. And I think the first is being a bit of a detective.
Thank you so much for joining us on another awesome episode of Bioenergetics Beat. I'm Heather Gray, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and certified bioenergetic practitioner, and today's episode is brought to you today by Nikki, Unleash the Wellness Within. It's a non-invasive, easily affordable, and highly effective approach to optimize wellness. It's a wearable device that puts frequency-based better life in your hands and on your wrists. Make sure to stick to the very end because, as usual, we have a special giveaway. You're not going to want to miss out, but you're not going to want to miss out on one thing that my next guest has to say, because we're going to be covering a very awesome topic that is near and dear to my heart. I know it's near and dear to the founder's heart, and well, actually two of our founders, because I think both of them have children who have been affected by autism. And a lot of us know that there's a huge correlation with Lyme disease and autism. And so I really am looking forward to diving in deeper with Miss Julie Matthews. Yay! Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us, Miss Julie, how did you get started into talking about autism? Tell us a little bit about your background, your story, and why.
Yes, so it was over 20 years ago. I was in nutrition school, and I just really was trying to understand the link between food and ADHD, and what role the junk food we feed our kids might play. And, I met a man who was uh, very passionate about it because he had recovered his kids from autism, and he was in making various nutritional supplements. And he spent hours telling me all about how there's something that you can do and how the children are really suffering, and um, that people were needed, and that people didn't that not that many people understood this topic. And that really just started my journey. And I've been really involved ever since, or passionate, I think would be a better term, ever since. And again, I'm not trying to change neurodiversity. I am just trying to help those individuals who are truly suffering, those that have chronic diarrhea and are therefore still in diapers at 16 years old, or those that have such debilitating anxiety they can't leave the house, or rigid behaviors that they're not able to kind of just enjoy their daily lives. So really my focus is just helping kids be healthier and happier, and support them with various food and nutrition choices.
It's got to be the hardest, I think, area to work in. I mean, I've been in Lyme for years and years and years, and that's quite the complex puzzle. But when you're working with autism and logic, when it comes to the food, because I was told that, a lot of folks who are artistic, they kind of get stuck on a certain food and you can't change their diet real quick. Some of them can't take supplements. So like, it's got to be really, really hard. I couldn't imagine how hard it is to probably work in that realm. And you just kind of, it sounds like you got tapped, right? Like you were like,
Yes.
he just like tapped you. He was like, you're it. You're going to
Yes.
carry on this torch. So God bless you for, answering the call.
Well, thank you. It's funny you say that, because I do think of him as, his name is Michael Lang, and I do think of him as a bit of my guardian angel. He did pass away from pancreatic cancer a number of years ago, and in the intro of my book, I share a little bit about his story, but I couldn't go into the whole story just for sake of time there. But long story short is that I saw him conference after conference, and that at the last conference I saw him at, we sat next to each other at dinner, and he said, "Remember when I first, got you into this?" And we were talking all about it. He seemed like such the kind of proud dad, and then that was the last time I ever saw him. So yes, I do feel like I was sort of tapped on the shoulder, and I am very glad that I was able to, really pursue this, because I've been really very passionate about it ever since.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I want to take just a really quick break because I want to get back. And when we do, I want to dive deeper into the personalized nutrition for autism. How is it that you typically work with folks who do kind of get stuck in this pattern of eating, supplements? I'd love to hear some of the successes or wins that you've seen with some of your clientele. Obviously, leave names out, but just to give people hope, because in this model, especially those that have had complex issues, Lyme, pandas, autism, there seems to be a lot of misinformation. There seems to be not a lot of support. Parents at their wits' ends, not knowing what to do for their kids, but watching their kids completely slip away. So like I said, this is why it's such a big passion of mine that we're talking about this today, because this younger generation is hurting and we need to change things quickly.
Mhm.
So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. When we come back, we'll be diving deeper into all those areas with Miss Julie.
Hey guys, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my favorite and probably my most impactful frequency that I use on the Nikki. If you've never seen this before, it looks like a little watch, but it's actually a frequency device with a bunch of different frequencies. It's bioenergetic, so it has this little frequency light situation that goes into your arm, and it pretty much makes an immediate difference. But my personal favorite frequency is the insomnia one. If you know me, you know I don't sleep at night. I'm known for like those middle of the night texts and random thoughts, and I have been that way my whole life, not just since I got sick with tick-borne illness. But the Nikki nighttime and or insomnia frequency is basically programmed to work with your body's natural resources to get you to go to sleep and get you set for nighttime. It helps with cellular repair and detoxification overnight, which is super, super important for everyone, but especially with people with Lyme and tick-borne illness like me. So I just wanted to kind of demystify it and share a little bit about it. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Bye.
Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health. We are Nikki.com.
Fantastic. Welcome back. So I kind of set you up with some of the questions before the break. So let's dive in, shall we?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us how, what does that mean? Personalized nutrition for autism. That's the
Mm.
name of your book, so what does that mean?
Great question. Well, my book is all about how the understanding that we're all unique individuals and therefore we all need a unique diet. And so it's really about personalized nutrition. Um, the Personalized Autism Nutrition Plan is really a 12-step program or guide that I created over many years of working with families to help them start with some of the what I would consider the easiest things that can provide some really great improvements for pretty much most people. So, for example, the first step is take out artificial additives. So, artificial colors, flavors, and preservatives and other food additives have been known in studies as well as by moms for decades that they can create hyperactivity and irritability and all sorts of behavioral challenges. And so it's fairly easy to avoid them by simply choosing another food. So before we even say get out sugar, eat good healthy things, just simply the fact of change one lollipop for a lollipop that's free of colors and flavors that are artificial is one really good first step that can sometimes provide very significant improvements in behaviors and really help an individual. And then from there, it looks into various ways of improving nutrition and then different therapeutic diets. And so, not everybody is going to need every step, but the goal is to figure out what is underlying that individual, what underlying factors in their gut or their nervous system or their immune system can be affecting the foods they tolerate and those they don't, and the nutrients they might be deficient in and therefore the nutrients they might need, and customizing that for them.
No, absolutely. It's too it. So another reason why this is hard, not only is it a complex case, but when I was in practice, I wanted to work with kids so bad. Like my kid has celiac, transgender. I know he's on the spectrum as well. So there was a big part of me that what I learned, I wanted to prevent other parents from having to go through. And I remember my first client, and not only, when you're working with kids, do you have to get the kid compliant, but you also have to get the parents compliant.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I remember the mom, she was like, I'll do anything, blah, 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 blah. And then I started talking about his diet, and she goes, you mean I have to cook for him? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, yes. And she was like, I just can't, he's 15. He's not in the house all the time. Like, I can't control, what he eats at this, yes. And, I also think there's a level of education that we can do with our kids. I think our kids are capable of more than we think that they are and understanding. But I just, it was such a shocker to me at her response of, you mean I have to cook for him? I'm like, okay. So how do you, again, so working with nutrition and some of these tougher clients, like how?
Yes. Well, I think there's a couple things. Sometimes there's a similar sentiment, but it might be slightly different. So, how am I going to cook for them? They're a super picky eater, or how am I going to cook for that, or how am I going to cook the types of things he needs? I don't have enough hours in the day to do special things. So, there might be a wide range of concerns about how they're going to have the time in the day to make the food that they need for them. And I think a couple things. One is that when your child is getting the foods that don't bother them, they are you're able to have more free time. They're able to enjoy their time more. You're able to. So I have a client that says, I'd rather happily cook in the kitchen while they're, you know, enjoying themselves in the other room than, having more difficult emotional behavioral challenges. And that makes a lot of sense to me. As a mom, I mean, for me, it's like so hard when your child is upset. It's hard to think, it's hard to do anything. So, um, I thought that was a really interesting way. So the benefits do outweigh the time that's necessary. And once you kind of get the hang of it, there is a learning curve for a new diet for all of you. But once you get past that learning curve, it is not really any different or more time consuming than any other diet. So that's another thing. I understand and I appreciate that it might be challenging at the beginning, but it won't always be that way. So I think those are a couple things. And then getting your child to eat those foods, that's a whole additional topic, which I'm happy to talk about. There's a whole step on just supporting picky eaters and helping to feed your child. But we'll just kind of take one topic at a time.
Yeah, no, I love it. And you must be, you're definitely way more patient than I am. And that's why you got tapped for this and not me, because I am kind of a rip the Band-Aid off kind of girl. When I was going through my Lyme journey, my coach told me to jump. I asked how high, but I didn't realize that not everybody's built that way,
Yes.
and that you just said, start with one lollipop, start with one thing. I'm like, oh, wait, I forgot that you can do that.
Yes.
So God bless you for showing us another way that yes, you can start off, small steps add up to big wins.
Yes.
So yeah, so let's tackle the picky eater one, because that's always been on my brain too, is that seems to be the biggest frustration of, like, he's in a phase right now where all he'll eat is goldfish. I
Yes.
mean, what do you do? Me, I'd be like, I'm sorry, you're the adult. Don't have goldfish in the house and have something else. But then again, I'm not in that situation, so I can't speak to it. So can you?
Yes. Yes. Well, if you're a parent and listening, know firstly that you're not alone. 70% of kids with autism are picky eaters. They have more picky eating habits, more unique picky eating habits. And so they're I find it is helpful to really take some time, be patient, and kind of just take things again one step at a time. And I think the first is being a bit of a detective. What is your child like and what do they not? So are there certain texture issues? That's very common. So if they don't like certain textures but they only like others, then try to work with those. So a really common example is crispy and crunchy foods. Kids typically like crispy and crunchy foods, typically, and they like things like potato chips and goldfish crackers and things. So, how can you work with that? Maybe you're trying to get more vegetables in. So, maybe you want something like kale chip or something that can be crispy and crunchy, but is healthy. Or maybe you look to get a sweet potato chip, or you make yourself some sort of another vegetable chip or something. And so, I have lots of recipes because I could create the most exciting, healthy, nutritious diet, but if a child doesn't eat it, then really don't get anywhere. So, healthy recipes that are kid friendly that incorporate these types of textures are something I really specialize in. So, there are lots of ideas for you there in my book. Um, so, that's one piece of it. The other one is figuring out what might be some of the underlying or biochemical reasons why somebody might be having challenges with picky eating. So, one of them, not so much on the biochemistry side, or who knows, maybe it is that idea of sensory sensitivity. Actually, I've seen sensory sensitivity improve with improving diet, but we'll just take that one, put it aside, and go more into things like nutrient deficiencies. So, there are some deficiencies that are associated with picky eating, where food tastes more bland or isn't as exciting or things like that, or artificial additives that are known to stimulate the brain that without them things might taste boring, or certain foods like gluten and dairy that create opioid compounds that literally fit in the opiate receptor, things similar in chemical structure to morphine or heroin. They're literally opioid like compounds from these foods. Most kids eat tons of wheat and tons of dairy. And so some of them create these opiate like compounds. And imagine how addictive those are. And so that makes it difficult to be interested in much else, anything else, because they're very focused on those foods. And I've seen countless times when we are able to remove those foods, all of a sudden they're, oh, there's protein choices over here. There's vegetable ideas that I actually like. But if we are solely focused on those foods that are feeding that chemical process, then it's hard to see it. So I like to approach it both in a multi-pronged approach where we might need to get support from a feeding therapist or an occupational therapist or someone that can help support there, but also what might be those biochemical aspects that diet and nutrients can help with.
I love that you brought that in. I teach that to my clients all the time. It's gliadiomorphine and casomorphine are the two, and most people are shocked. They're like, "I'm sorry, what?" And when I'm working with people, the first thing they're like, "Just don't take away my bread." And I'm like, "You know why I can't take away your bread?"
Right.
And there's some people, so there's genetic tests that I've ran too. There's some people that are more susceptible to
Mhm.
those receptors getting hit by those foods. And so when I was running like week Zoomers on folks, I would see that part and I'd be like, "Oh, you're probably going to go through some withdrawals over the next couple of weeks." And they just kind of look at me like I have two heads. But then,
Mhm.
of course, a couple days into it, they're like, "Oh my God, you weren't kidding. This is horrible." I'm like, "I know, but it does get better." Same thing with the sugar. Once we get the stuff out of our system and our system starts to reset, it's amazing how our taste buds come back, how we don't crave certain things. Like our bodies are so amazing at that type of thing.
Absolutely. And you are correct with all of that. But I don't want to scare parents off in terms of like it's going to be a horrible experience, because I share three different ways that they might take out those foods. And
Again,
there's
this is coming from the all or nothing girl, so
yeah,
only
there
take that with a grain of
yeah,
salt.
there's the cold turkey method in there, but then there's also a more gentle approach. And so, you'll see I prefer the more gentle approach. So, hopefully that won't be such an issue. But I think you do bring up a good point, is if it is a struggle at the beginning, it goes along a little bit with that learning curve I mentioned. That can be a little steep at first, but it does get much, much better as, over a short bit of time.
Oh, absolutely. One of those, do you ever test or look for pyrrole disorder?
Yes, I do
Because
talk
that's
about that.
because when you're talking about sensory stuff, that's what it kind of reminded me of. And so a lot of folks with high anxiety, depression, sensory stuff. Pyrrole disorder is something easy enough where it's, too much oxidative stress, and the byproducts are pyrroles, and the way our body gets rid of them is through urine. And so we can test that in the urine, and on their way out of our body, they suck up B vitamins and they suck up zinc, which causes these neurological imbalances in our body for us to not. So it's crazy that when we can balance back that body again, how a person will go back to being, a little bit more on the regular side instead of being overstimulated. I was one of those as well. And so I know that if I'm constantly testing my zinc, my B vitamins, and my copper ratio to make sure that everything's in balance, because the minute it goes out of balance, I go out of balance. It's quite fascinating.
Yes, it is true. And actually, pyroluria is much more prevalent in kids with autism, as well as people with ADHD, people with anxiety, which actually is why that while my book is the Personalized Autism Nutrition Plan, the subtitle is Nourishing Hope with Kids with ASD, ADHD, Anxiety, and Neurodevelopmental Delays, because it doesn't just help kids with autism. When we look at improving oxidative stress, inflammation, the gut, the microbiome, the immune system, when we take out the inflammatory foods, when we add the important nutrients, when we address things that might be more individual to a person, like whether they have pyrrole disorder, that those are the types of things that can improve a variety of different conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. So with probably got about 10 minutes more, what are some of the, kind of bigger, other nuggets you kind of want to leave us with, surrounding this topic, like some of the bigger issues and hurdles that you find that people have a hard time getting over?
Mm. I mean, I would say that, we did some studies, and well, one of the studies that we did was looking at 13 different therapeutic diets in autism. And we
Ooh.
found that they all helped. All the diets had a positive improvement. And we compared them to psychiatric and seizure medications. And we found that they were significantly better at improving or providing an overall benefit, and significantly less likely to have adverse effects. So that's just a nice thing. Diets tend to have a lot of benefit with little adverse effects. So that I think is helpful. And then also we found out that we looked at healthy diets and low sugar diets, but we also looked at various therapeutic diets like a gluten-free, dairy-free diet, or what I call a low salicylate diet, or different.
More.
Yeah, we looked at different grain-free diets. Specifically in the study, we looked at SED and GAPS, and we looked at paleo, and we found that a healthy diet should incorporate both a therapeutic diet should include both adding healthy foods and removing the foods that are problematic for them. And so that's a little bit of a bigger discussion than we probably have time for, but I look at salicylates that can cause a lot of hyperactivity and irritability and aggression. I had one client that had uh, pretty significant aggression where he was lashing out at therapists and things like that. And it was virtually gone after taking out salicylates. So it can have a profound effect and allow his parents to do things a little more naturally, which is what they wanted in that situation. And so that's just one example. Salicylates are found in all sorts of natural, healthy foods like herbs and spices and grapes and berries. And again, they are healthy foods generally. But if we have things that are underlying our biochemistry and our system that deplete those, then we might be getting a variety of symptoms that are harmful to us. So, looking at both which compounds we might need to remove, at least for maybe a period of time, and then what healthy nutrients and foods that we can help that nourish them, that I think is the winning combination, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely. So is there a way to test to find out, because I know you mentioned kale chips, and my brain kind of went, wait, oxalates,
Mhm.
so, you can get a little overwhelming. Is it, am I staying away from oxalates, or am I staying away from grains, or am I staying away from salicylates, or, how do you go about finding which one is the bigger offender in your kid's journey?
Yes, there are a variety of things. Some things can be tested for, like oxalate. Other things not as easy to test for. One of the, I think, cool things we found in our study of the 13 diets was that certain diets were better at improving certain symptoms. So we can use symptoms as a bit of a guide to help us figure out, okay, you have these common symptoms and you eat these foods high in that. Okay, that's probably a good suspect for something that might be a problem. So that's one aspect. And in the book, I talk about every chapter that talks about a different diet goes into the most common symptoms associated with those food compounds. So that's one thing. I also talk about the tests that can be helpful. So with gluten and dairy, there's a variety of different tests that might be able to be helpful to help somebody figure it out. So when there's testing, we can look at that. We could look at symptoms. We can look at reactions from foods. So there are a variety of different ways to get a sense of whether somebody might have a problem with those foods.
That totally makes sense. I love it. Thank you. Great answer. Yeah. So any other little departing nugget, giving parents hope, because, I think sometimes even the ones that I spoke to, well, I've tried this and I've tried that and nothing's worked, and so they just kind of give in a kind of a defeatist type of way. But, I want to give people back hope. Like, you got to keep
Yes.
trying, you got to keep digging. So what do you have to say for that?
I would say, keep nourishing hope. I think that's important. I would say, one of the most common situations I see is that people will try a gluten-free and dairy-free diet and they'll say, we didn't get any benefits, so we just, like you said, we just stopped doing diet. And I'm not saying that they didn't do the diet right or they made some mistake. Maybe they didn't do the diet 100%. Maybe they didn't realize that the teacher was giving something at school once a week, or a well-meaning relative was giving something, and even a fraction of a grain of rice of gluten is enough to cause a reaction. And so maybe they didn't realize that something they had a small little amount in it. Or it could be that they didn't take out a second food. So probably the one of the most common things I actually see is that they're doing the diet, the gluten-free, dairy-free diet, just fine, but they didn't realize salicylates were something, and so their diet's loaded with salicylates. And so until they remove the salicylates, both of the things that are causing a problem, they might not see any results from the diet because those one set of foods are creating such symptoms, it overshadows any benefit they would have seen. And I can't tell you the countless times I've heard this particular situation from people at conferences that I talk to or my clients. And so my point there is not that it's always gluten and dairy and salicylates, but that sometimes it's a combination of factors and not getting to the combination of things. So if that was a case where diet wasn't helpful, maybe going back, maybe there's some other factor, maybe some underlying condition was still present that they hadn't addressed. Maybe there's more than one food compound. So I would say don't give up on diet, don't give up on nutrition, work on figuring out what the underlying factors might be, and then working to address those along with healthy food choices and good nutritional support.
Absolutely. And this can get so overwhelming to try to do it by yourself. I was a DIYer myself for 3 years, didn't get anywhere, threw a lot of stuff at a wall, seeing what stuck, spent $20,000 more than I needed to where if I would have just spent a little bit of money up front working with a specialist, working with someone who knows how to guide you on this journey, you're going to get results faster and you're going to save money in the long run. So, highly, highly recommend working with somebody when you're trying to tease this out, especially when it comes to your own kid, because sometimes we can be very blind to stuff when it comes to our own kids. So highly recommend working with somebody. So this is a great spot of the selfless, shameless promotion time of the show. So where can people find out more about you, Miss Julie?
Well, they can find me at the website for the book, which it's minus the, so it's Personalized Autism Nutrition Plan.com, which is a bit of a long title. So they can also go to nourishinghope.com. And they can find the book if they just look up Julie Matthews and autism nutrition. They can find the book at any major reseller.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And also make sure to visit wearenikki.com/podcast and enter in BioBeats to get 10% off your Nikki. And because we really love our customers and the way we show appreciation, we give away a Nikki device and a wellness set of frequencies, a $598 value on every episode. So make sure to go to the show notes to enter. Good luck and join us every week. Oh my gosh, it's that time. It's time to announce the winners of June's. Oh my gosh, where's the time flying? It's time to announce June's winners. We got Maggie H, Cindy C, Garlina J, and Matthew M. Congratulations, you win a Nikki device plus a wellness set of frequency, a $598 value. Congratulations. Hey, don't be sad because you didn't win this time. Keep listening, keep doing your chance to enter. You'll get one. Or just break down and buy one and use the code BioBeats to save 10% off. Either way, we really appreciate you and congratulations again to the June winners. Thanks again. Have a healthy day.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I came to use the Nikki actually through my sister who was working for the company at the time, and she had been speaking to me about the frequencies on there and how it had really helped with stress and anxiety and things like that. And I had thought, well, I have stress and anxiety, maybe this can help me too. And in addition to therapy and other things I was trying to do to help myself, I thought this might be an additional tool that would help me. The nighttime frequency really helps me with my sleeping. The pain frequency, I have some issues with my shoulders and that seem to have gotten a lot better. These things I knew nothing about when I got it. So it kind of morphed for getting it for one reason and kind of helping with other things. I found actually the biggest benefit I found is I am prone to UTIs. And I was always on medication, always going to the doctor, always getting them. And the first time I got one after I had the Nikki, I thought it has the viruses and bacteria. Let's try it. Well, since then, I've had it for over a year. Normally would have about 5 to 6 UTIs in that time. I've had 2 that I've needed medication for, and the rest, I feel it coming on. I put on my viruses and bacteria, and within 3-4 days, it's completely gone. I don't have to have medication. I don't have to go to the doctor or do anything like that. So it's been in that way life-changing for me. I still do use the stress and anxiety, like today for this testimonial. I have that on right now because I'm on camera. So that kind of thing helps me. And I find that when I'm in a stressful situation and I put it on, it helps me almost immediately. I immediately feel calmer, whether that's a frequency or me knowing that it's working or knowing that it's helping in addition to that.
Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health. wearenikki.com. The views, information, and opinions expressed in this content are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of FreeMedica. FreeMedica Technologies, Inc. and its employees are not responsible, nor verifies accuracy any of the information contained in the following content. The primary purpose of this content is to educate and inform. This content does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services.